Hi everyone. Last time I was talking to you about the first time I was alone in a different country halfway across the world. That was the first time I had experienced meeting Christians and learning about Christianity. So after that, I was accepted for a master's in the US. I went to Penn State Harrisburg in Middletown, Pennsylvania. Small campus, 5,000 students total. That was the second time now. I was going fully on my own, away from home. In 2015 August, my new journey began as a master's student. One other thing I had remembered from being in University of Central Missouri before was that I should join some of these groups, like the navigators or like other groups, maybe international students or similar groups where I can get to know more people. I landed in Middletown, Pennsylvania. There was this international student services group. They actually helped me out. One of the staff members, I'll call her Samantha, she came and picked me up. She also had arranged for one of the apparently community members to help get the students settled. So I actually stayed in someone else's home for a few days, and then I got my apartment, so I went there. So the international student service helped a lot. They organized different groups and some orientations so international students could get to know about just the campus and everything. Samantha was a part of that, and there were a few other members of the same international student services group, so they were really nice. Unintentionally or maybe intentionally, I was looking for groups that were maybe Christian groups, or more specifically navigators, because I think I had a very good experience with people like that. Apparently there was no navigators on that campus, but again, I was just trying to get to know people in those groups. International student services, they had a lot of different groups. One of the things they did, they actually had a bus which would take international students to different grocery stores, because Middletown was a very small town, so there wasn't really much around. So I used to go on that. On that, there would always be Samantha. She would be the coordinator for this trip. So in that time, I actually got to talk to her a little bit. Just, like she actually talked to, of course, all different students. So she also asked me about, like, I'm a Muslim or where I'm from, all that. And of course, I told her, like, I'm Muslim. I think she was very curious. She would always ask me different questions about my beliefs. She told me she's a Christian. She seemed very nice. She seemed generally interested in what I had to say about my beliefs. Like, for example, there's one conversation I remember very well. This was in one of the grocery stores. I remember she was asking about Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael. I was telling her there's a celebration in Islam. It's called Eid al-Adha. It's actually in the remembrance of Abraham's potential sacrifice of his son. And I believe that Abraham was asked by God to sacrifice his son. I should clarify that it is Ishmael. I know in the Bible it's not, but at that time, of course, I didn't know that. I told her, it's Ishmael. He took Ishmael to the mountain, and then the whole story is basically very similar to as in the Bible. God sent a ram to be sacrificed in place of Ishmael in that case. So I told her the whole story, and I was like, in that remembrance of that scenario, we do this Eid al-Adha where we actually sacrifice a lamb, like a goat or something else. Surprisingly, she didn't really question this. She didn't really actually even ask, like, oh, really? Because in the Bible we have this. She just learned about my specific thing that I was telling her. Then at one of the events, I actually met her whole family. I learned that her husband, so I'll call him Jonah. Jonah is a pastor at a church in Elizabethtown, which was a town next to Middletown. I learned that they had 5 kids. One of them was adopted. He was the oldest one, and then 4 other kids. And it's like his daughter and the younger daughter. I'll call her Tabitha. Another son, and the last one, I'll call him David, the youngest son I met. So I actually had a very nice time with them over there. It was like some kind of an event. And they actually invited me to their home. They were like, oh, you should come to our home. We sometimes bring international students also. Have you ever been to our home? And I was like, oh, no, never. They're like, oh, you should, And then I went, and I actually had a really good time. I think that was the first time I actually got closer to them further. There were some difficult situations started to happen in my life at that time. I won't, again, go into those details. Very difficult situations. I was alone. I didn't really have any family or friends. So the only people I knew was Samantha and her family. And then, of course, some people at the International Student Services. So I actually just, went to Samantha and asked for some help and advice. She was very nice about it. She actually did help me through that situation a lot, and her family actually also helped me a lot. And yeah, I started just talk more to them, and I think I got closer to them further at that time because of that situation so much that I started to call them mom and dad, because they were like basically like my American mom and dad, especially my American mom. She did treat me and love me as a son. Even trying to learn, oh, these are the things I really like. Like, for example, she knew I like pomegranates, or I don't know, Cocoa Puffs, or so many other things. She try to get them for me. So during that time, I started to talk to them a little more about like their beliefs. Again, it's interesting that they didn't ever try to push or force anything on me. It was just that I learned that they were Christians, so I just started to get to know more about them, and their beliefs. So at that time, I was like, they seem like really nice people, and one thing started to bother me. How is God with them in this? Why are they so connected to God? How is that possible? In my head, God should be only, at that time, should only be with Muslims, because we're on the right path, and Christians aren't. I was like, how is that possible? Why is God helping them? Why is God connected to them? It doesn't make any sense. We're the right people. They're not. I actually started to see not only that they're just nice, it seems like they're living their life on principles that I thought I grew up with during my time back home. And that was one thing, it just kept on bothering me. Why is God with them? Doesn't make any sense. And I think that was maybe one of the reasons I started to look more into Christianity, I guess, a little bit. So I started to look into different debates online. I just, search YouTube, and I'm like, okay, let's find some different debates between like some Muslim scholars and Christian scholars, just to kind of see, what is it that they say. I was looking for how can I prove that Islam is the right religion and Christianity isn't. And of course, I had also talked to my mentor, my high school mentor. I was still in touch with him, just to ask him, like, oh, can you suggest a few people that I could look into, specifically Muslim scholars? So I started looking into two different people. One was Zakir Naik. I knew about him a lot from my time back home. And another one, Ahmed Didat. At that time, he had already passed away, and I've not been alive for a very long time, actually. But his debates were still available online. I also found Shabir Ali, his lectures and debates. And of course, during the debates, I started to see some Christians that were debating with them. But I started to look into some Christian apologists' videos about their beliefs, and more specifically, their arguments against the Quran. The person I started to look into the first was David Wood. Other than that, I think James White and William Craig. So I started to look into all of these. My main objective here was, let's try to find out why Christians are wrong, what are their issues against Islam, and more specifically, what Muslim scholars are saying against Christianity and the Bible, and just to show the Bible is wrong, Jesus is not God. There were, of course, some questions that popped up during the debates, things that I didn't know about. Like, for example, there were a lot of things and questions that started to pop up about Muslims and violence, early Muslim wars that happened, things about Prophet Muhammad and his life. There were things about, like, for example, his marriage with Aisha. She was very young, and the Prophet was very old at that time. Other things about the Quran, that the Quran is saying things like Muslims should go ahead and kill non-believers, stuff like that. Again, I didn't know about these things. And of course, I started to see answers to that from the Muslim scholars. And things that I didn't know, I would ask my mentor. I would call him up from here to Pakistan, and I would try to ask some of the questions that I would have. Other thing that I started looking into was more, which I think I was more interested in, was the arguments that Muslim scholars had against the Bible. For example, Prophet Muhammad is in the Bible. So like there would be some verses that they brought up from Deuteronomy about a prophet that would say the words of God. And there were some verses from Songs of Solomon. And then there would be some arguments against the Bible, like, they were pointing out, like, did Jesus say that he's God? And then, things like, before Abraham was, I am. Does that really mean that Jesus is God? Of course not. Did Jesus ever say he's God? No. And I could provide more examples of that. At that time, I would also try to go and talk to my American dad, Jonah, Samantha's husband. So I would go, whenever I meet them, I would talk to him about these kind of things. Because I tried to talk to my American mom about it, but she was like, I think it's best that you actually talk to dad about that because he is more knowledgeable. He was a pastor, so I guess he would know more. We actually had a lot of conversations. Mainly, I would try to bring up some of the things I learned and ask him. And he would try to tell me, well, actually, that's not what it means. And one of the things he said, look, Ali, a lot of things that you're bringing up there, what we call proof texting. You're taking just some specific parts of the Bible and specific verses or specific lines, taking them out of context to show the meaning that you really wanted to show, but they actually don't mean that. For example, like the Songs of Solomon, I was thinking like showing like how the prophet Muhammad is mentioned there, and he was like, well, you should probably look at it more like what the song is about, and try to look into more detail of that. The song is really not about that. It's just one verse there and there that probably is not related to this. And then of course there were other situations like this, so that helped. But I didn't really trust him. Of course I wouldn't trust him because I was like, okay, well, they're probably just trying to make me Christian. Their whole agenda is that, you know, they want me to become Christians, or they want to defend their religion. Of course they're not right, because, you know, that's what I believed, and I'm the one who is right in this situation. And the scholars that I'm learning about, they know what they're talking about, and they must be right. I think one of the things my dad said was like, look, I think you should actually read the Bible yourself and start to see, you know, what it says, rather than just looking into specific verses from different people. It's interesting that he never brought up any debater in front of me. He never said, go listen to this person or go listen to this debater. Not once. He didn't even ask me where I brought up all of these questions from, or who did I listen to. He's like, Ali, just go read it yourself a little bit. I think you will learn more about that. And what he was trying to show was like, look, I have read a little bit of the Quran, but one of the things that is really missing is this blood penalty, and the Bible and the Old Testament has been very much clear of that. And then of course he said, you know, like Jesus has been in the Old Testament from the very beginning, and everywhere you can see that, and that's something I don't really see Prophet Muhammad in the Bible or in the Old Testament. And I think you should maybe look into that. Again, interestingly, he never said, you know, like some of these academic proofs, like there are so many manuscripts available for the Bible and this and that. It was really very truly, very genuinely, he was trying to maybe show that, okay, look, just read it, and I think you'll maybe try to find it yourself. That one of the things I had believed is that I am not going to question the Quran and Islam. For me, that was the truth. When you live in a society, when you've been told this, you just believe it. I just believe there are scholars who know this. They have figured it out. Quran is the word of God. It is the right religion. I believe in it. I cannot go against that, because somehow I am so privileged that I was born a Muslim. I was given this gift from God. I can't go against that and go backwards to the Christians who stopped at Jesus. I can't do that. Actually, it was a conversation I was having with one of my roommates. He was from Nigeria. I believe he was a Christian also, but he wasn't really very practicing. And he's telling me, he's like, Ali, you seem like a very curious person. You seem like a person who thinks about everything. You're a very smart person. You're probably one of the smartest people I know. You think through everything. You logically go through all of the things. But when it comes to your religion, you feel like you just stop thinking. It's funny how I responded. And I said, for everything else, I think through it, and then I believe it. But for my religion, I believe it, and then think about it. That's what I told him. It was the opposite. When I was having these conversations with my American dad, it was a dilemma, basically. I have to question the Quran. I have to question my religion. I can't do that. I believe in it. How can I question that? It's like opposite of what I believed. It's opposite of how I have been raised. It doesn't make any sense. How can I do this? Especially considering, you know, that Christians, of course, are wrong. Christians, of course, are trying to convert me towards the wrong religion. But there were, of course, lingering thoughts in my head. There were a few things that I was a little uncomfortable with about the violence claims, about Islam and the Quran, a few things about Prophet's life, a few things about inequality between men and women. Those were lingering thoughts there. And also starting to maybe listen to my dad more and more, maybe reading a little more, starting to see maybe the Bible is making a little more sense. And of course, I had not read the Quran still, so I didn't know how much sense it made. But things were changing a little bit for me. I think it was like this movie Oblivion with Tom Cruise, and he's living in this world where he's been told his whole life that like they were saving humanity or they were saving Earth, and there are these evil people that they're trying to deal with, and all of a sudden he actually meets those quote quote evil people, but they were actually just other humans. And it's like slowly he starts to learn that what he was living with were actually the ones who were evil, and they were the ones who were wrong, and the people that he was hunting his whole life were actually good and the righteous people in this case. That was actually kind of the thing I was starting to think about also a little bit with the Quran and Islam. Maybe it is like that for me. Maybe the reason I'm not able to see it because I've believed it my whole life, but maybe it's something that could be wrong. It was very difficult for me to even think that. And I felt really ashamed or maybe conflicted even getting to that because I thought it was a sin to even do this. But I think what really pushed me over that edge was that I believed my American mom and dad truly cared for me. I thought that they really want the best for me. I don't think they would want anything that's wrong for me. It's like your parents, and they are. And I think that trust, once I started to trust my American parents, I think that's when I was like, okay, maybe I can start to question. Maybe the Quran or Islam could be wrong. It's funny because even right now saying it just seems very weird to me and very difficult. But I think that was it. It was that trust in my American parents and the fact that I had seen them for about a year and a half at that point and how they lived their lives, how their kids lived their lives, and other people in the community lived their lives. I don't think I have met many Muslims like that in my whole life that have this strong of a connection with God or the way they live their life. Like all the principles that I had learned growing up, they're very apparent in their lifestyle. When they pray, they actually care about it. It's not like some ritual they have to do. When they say something, they actually do it because of the way they believe and not because of some other person telling them or anything like that. And they truly believe the Bible and they actually know the Bible. They've read it. They know what it says inside out. And I don't know the Quran. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I've heard about it. I've learned about it here and there, but I don't know much about that. And that was it. That was the questioning process for me. Once that started, I think I was much more open to starting to look into the Bible and Christianity in a curious way, in a way that I actually wanted to learn about it, and I actually wanted to get to know more about Christianity with the aim that I could potentially accept it. I don't think I ever had that aim before. That was it. That was the time.